Okay. 2012 is not off to a good start. Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. This is Marville, and it is one of the worst comics ever made.
Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. Brodsky, you're not the smartest. Life out, you're not an artist. Anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn. Linkara, he's a man punch, wears a parody hat. Linkara, he has a magic gun. Where'd he purchase that? Linkara, coins, robots, Amazons and trucks. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara. Somebody save me. Let your warm hands break right.
This is one that's been on the back burner for a while, mostly because I didn't own a copy. Unfortunately, I do now. There are bad comics out there for various reasons, and some are bad because of different opinions on them. There are people out there who actually like Cry for Justice for reasons that completely elude me. But nobody, I mean nobody, is going to come rushing to the defense of this thing. This is a mess, and it starts off with why it was created at all. Supposedly, Marville came about because of a bet. Bill Jamas, or Hamas, I'm sorry, I don't know the pronunciation, who was president of Marvel at the time, made a bet with writer Peter David. The sales on Peter David's Captain Marvel series, and that's Marvel's Captain Marvel, not the DC one, comic books are confusing, were in heavy decline, and apparently it was believed that it was because the book was too self-referential and insular. Readers couldn't get into it because of backstory and references to other work. As such, the bet was centered around whose book would sell better in a promotion called You Decide. Because poor literacy creates books like Marville. Peter David launched a new Captain Marvel series from #1, and Bill Jamas made Marville. Marville is a 6-issue miniseries, kind of 7, but we'll get to that when we eventually get to issue 6, that starts off as a parody comic that evolved into a pseudo-philosophical treatise on the nature of God and the universe as seen by Bill Jamas, and just collapsed under its own stupidity. But what is Marville a parody of? Well, pretty much anything. And we'll see why Peter David won that bet as we dig into Marville #1. Judging from this cover, and the title of the comic, you'd assume this was a parody of Smallville, that Superman prequel show that lasted 10 years too long. But nope, this has nothing to do with that other than the title. Why is it called Marville? Hell if I know. Smallville had been around for a year before this came out, so it's not like the reference was all that timely. If it's meant to be funny, then I don't get the joke. Oh, and trust me, you will be hearing the words, "I don't get the joke," a lot in this review. I will give Marville one credit over all the other so-called humor comics that I've reviewed before. It's in color. Yeah, because that was my problem with Bimbos in Time. If the dinosaur poop at the end had been in color, I would have loved it! We start with An Insider's Guide to Marville #1. Here are a few things you need to know about comic books and about the real world to get the inside jokes in Marville #1. This page completely baffles me. The first section explains the backstories of Batman, Spider-Man, and Superman. This came out in 2002. The only people who would buy this damn thing would already know this stuff. And frankly, most people in the real world know who those characters are too. Bruce Wayne's parents were killed by a robber who left them to die in an alley. So now, as Batman, he seeks revenge by fighting crime. Hijinks to follow. Okay, that was kind of amusing. Now let's ruin the joke. Peter Parker's foster parent was killed by a robber whom Peter, as Spider-Man, failed to stop. Hijinks to follow. Doing the joke once is fine considering the dark tone of Batman stories. Doing it again with Spider-Man just makes you look desperate for a joke! Kal-El's parents placed him in a rocket ship before they were killed by the explosion of the planet Krypton. Now, as Superman, he fights for truth and justice, the American way to follow. It's funny because they didn't say hijinks that time. Now we get to the second section, which explains that DC Comics was run by Paul Levitz, it's not anymore, making any jokes on this matter completely dated, who fights a never-ending battle to keep his business obscure. Okay, that's just an awkward sentence. Was Paul Levitz trying to prevent DC from becoming obscure? Was Paul Levitz trying to make DC obscure? What the hell? What businessman would want their company to be obscure? This is no small feat, as DC owns Batman and Superman, and they, in turn, are owned by AOL Time Warner, which ranks among the world's largest and most prominent entertainment, publishing, and merchandising companies. AOL folks show up all over Marville. And by that, they mean Ted Turner is the only one related to AOL that shows up and nobody else does, so saying that is meaningless. It goes on to explain that before Time Warner was sold to AOL, it bought out a lot of Ted Turner's businesses. Now, the reason why this is so damn confusing for me, aside from the fact that I don't really care all that much about business deals between huge conglomerates, is that by explaining this, they pretty much tell what the joke is. I'm serious, there are jokes in this centered squarely around Ted Turner and selling out to AOL, or him starting the Goodwill games in the 80s. Or, in other words, they're explaining the joke!
If you have to explain a joke, there is no joke!
Then it goes on to explain about how Ted Turner married Jane Fonda? What the hell does that have to do with jokes about Time Warner? Oh, and by the way, they divorced in 2001, yet this comic depicts them as happily married. Again! This came out in 2002! That's like me doing a joke about how steamy Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck's relationship is getting. In 2010! But enough of the backstory. Let's get to the comic itself and why this thing is a mess. We open in the year 5002 AD at the opening of some guy's comic book store. Congratulations, your new store is huge! After 3,000 years, the comic industry finally recovered from Ron Perelman bankrupting Marvel. Who? Oh, the guy who bankrupted Marvel in the mid-90s and almost screwed over the entire industry. I had to look that up because I'm the kind of guy who cares more about the stories than the business side of things, as most casual fans are. So you can just imagine how hilarious that joke must have been to a casual fan. And wait, why the hell did we spend sentences on Ted Turner and Jane Fonda if the first joke out of this thing is about Ron Perelman? Anyway, meteors begin crashing down into the city and destroys the guy's comic shop. Though strangely, the two in front of the shop are just standing there, despite the fact that an explosion like that should send them flying. We cut to Ted Turner and Jane Fonda. Yeah, they're still alive in the year 5002. No, it isn't a joke or anything, it's just a part of the comic, and we never get an explanation why. I would have thought it was just a typo, like they meant 2005 instead of 5002, except all the visuals show a futuristic city, and the comic guy says it took 3,000 years to recover from Marvel's bankruptcy. Anyway, plot. Ted Turner says that a meteor shower is starting in 5 minutes, and a giant one will strike AOL on. Yes, they explain later that Earth was bought by Ted Turner, who then sold it to AOL, who renamed it AOL-on. You fools! You ruined the brand name recognition of Earth! Earth stays crunchy even in milk! No one knows anything about AOL-on! Also, the fashions in the future look really stupid. Apparently women wear red dresses with checkerboard highlights. Anyway, Ted Turner says it's the end of the world. Unless... Unless what?
Captain Planet! Captain Planet!
No, actually, Ted Turner suggests the much more rational plan of putting on baseball caps, walking out, yelling, "Wow!" and karate chopping a meteor. And it works! Look, everyone, the chop works! Let's all do this together and we can save the planet! You expect thousands of people to gather together and chant like Hollywood Indians? Are you nuts? Okay, this is apparently a reference to baseball controversies surrounding the use of Native Americans in baseball teams, and in particular the Atlanta Braves and their use of a chop motion. I actually was really confused by this originally until it was explained to me. You know why? Because I'm not a baseball fan, and I didn't know or care this was happening at the time. It's just a dated reference that will leave future readers utterly baffled. Why is it here? Because Ted Turner owns the Atlanta Braves. That still doesn't answer why he thought doing that to a meteor would work, but then again, Ted Turner is alive in the year 5002. Clearly he is some kind of robot that can take down meteors in a single stroke. By the way, did I mention that there's a crowd outside Ted Turner's house? Because, you know, when meteors start crashing into the planet, the first thing you should do is go to immortal Ted Turner's house. Or maybe Ted Turner is like Merlin and he ages backwards. The guy was 65 years old when this comic came out, and he doesn't look all that old in these panels. Anyway, the crowd starts following their lead when some random guy comes up. Cease and desist at once! Your chopping exaggerates and trivializes ancient Native American rituals for the sake of a stupid baseball game! You know, if somehow you do find this offensive, even though saving the planet should take priority, perhaps you should try punching them, or hitting them with a stick or something. They seem pretty weak. Hey, wait, if these meteors can blow up huge buildings and cause property damage, why is it so damn easy to chop them in half? Jane Fonda points out that they're trying to save the world, but the guy just says, "Nevertheless." And I guess that's the end of the conversation, because the two just go back inside and no one tries anything further. The guy stands there, smug and smiling at this, before a meteor thankfully smashes his face in. At least I think it's the same guy, because he's wearing the same clothes, despite having a different facial structure and hairstyle than before. Jane Fonda points out that their child will die so young, and I wonder if this isn't supposed to be like their descendants, you know, like Ted Turner the 29th or something. I only say that because this Ted Turner has a decent mustache, whereas the real Ted Turner can barely get a mustache to form over his upper lip. Anyway, Ted's master plan is to use a rocket ship to send their son to Earth. Ted, honey, that's a harebrained scheme. That's what they all said about the TBS and CNN and TNT. And the Goodwill games. Wow, it's a good thing we had that opening expository page to point out that Ted Turner made the Goodwill games, or else I wouldn't have been able to laugh at that. And yeah, that joke, that's the only reason they mentioned the Goodwill games in that introduction. They're never brought up again! Jane Fonda points out that they are on Earth, thus his entire plan is stupid. Then a meteor hits and destroys the craft, and they carry on their conversation during this as if nothing is happening. Ted Turner gets the idea to instead send their son back in time. This is serious, and seriously, there is no such thing as time travel. And in all seriousness, you are not Yes Minister!
Serious repercussions.
Serious repercussions.
Of the utmost seriousness. Yes, that is serious.
Jane Fonda doesn't believe that he has a time machine and asks how it works. I utilized dilithium crystals to alter the space-time continuum. These are just parts of an old PlayStation 1 and a couple of Atari controllers. That joke could have been funny if you forgot that this takes place in the year 5002. I guess there'll be a big PlayStation 1 nostalgia trip in 3,000 years. And yeah, maybe one could argue that it's farcical. It's not meant to be taken seriously. It's just a goofy little reference. I'm sorry, but no. Even a farce has to follow some form of logic and structure, and a lot of the problems with these jokes and references stem back to setting this in the year 5002. And why? For that joke at the beginning about it taking 3,000 years to recover from Marville's bankruptcy? Hate to break it to you guys, but even if I had known who Ron Perelman was when walking into this, it wouldn't have been that funny to begin with. Cal AOL, Mommy and Daddy have something important to tell our special boy. Ease up on the baby talk, Pop. I'm like 18. I guess by the year 5000, those damn young people will be really detached from the real world, since Cal AOL doesn't seem at all affected by the meteors crashing into his house. Ted Turner tells him that he must travel back in time and that our tragic deaths will give you a heightened sense of responsibility. Okay, I'm sure that's supposed to be a Spider-Man joke, but that doesn't make any sense! 1, how will your deaths give him a sense of responsibility? Connect the dots for me. 2, Uncle Ben's death just taught Spider-Man that with great power comes great responsibility. This kid doesn't have any power. He's just some asshole 18-year-old who doesn't care that his dad has been building time machines and spaceships out of his retro gaming collection. 3, this is really dumb. Well, if you're sending me away, at least give me one of those green crystals with all the knowledge of the universe. For the last time, you're not getting your Christmas present early. No, instead, Ted Turner hands him an AOL trial CD. Oh, wait, this is the future. AOL trial Blu-ray? Now, wait a damn minute. Doesn't AOL own the planet? Why would there be trial CDs when they'd probably just make everyone use AOL? Ted Turner tells him he needs a special suit in order to get into his TARDIS that says Marville across it. Sure, but what's Marville? You see, son, Dad's comic company, DCC, sucked. They couldn't make a decent book. JSA the Titans, Starman, JSA Batman, Young Justice. But hey, even if this mean-spirited jabbing at DC was accurate, they still didn't make Marville, now did they? There's more to that quote-unquote joke, but let's just skip it considering how much we still need to cover with this. So the kid travels back in time. This is like a story told by the cybernetic ghost of Christmas past from the future.
And then in the year 5002, Ted Turner and Jane Fonda sent their infant son of 18 years back to the present in a time machine made of PlayStation 1 parts.
You've been drinking again, haven't you?
Shut up! You're not the boss of me!
After Cal AOL is sent back, Jane Fonda wonders if they should travel back in time too, but Ted Turner says it'd be risky. So it's not risky enough for your son, but sending yourselves back? Oh hell no, too risky! Immediately upon arriving in the past, Cal AOL is met by several comic fans who see that his outfit says Marvel Enterprises, the second word is on his belt, and they ask if he knows Joe Quesada. What, you own a shirt that says Marvel on it and immediately people think you're best buds with Marvel staff? This is my Secret Wars t-shirt. I wear it because I'm best friends with Dan Slott and Brian Michael Bendis. Cal AOL decides to see if he has any superpowers because he's now in the past. Wait, what? Dude, you're a time traveler. That does not give you superpowers. Naturally, this fails, but then his dog that we saw earlier, AOL Stro, has been sent back in time by his parents. So the current count is your children and pets, A-OK to risk sending into the past. Yourselves? What, are you crazy or something? This sucks. I didn't go to a place with lighter gravity, so I'm not super strong. No X-ray vision. I come all the way from the future, and all I have to show for it is this stupid shirt. You know, I've said it before, but I've never quite meant it as literally as I do now. The future is dumb. We get a new example of how moronic our protagonist is. Oh yeah, did I mention that? Cal AOL is the main character. He walks into the middle of the street and is almost run over by a taxi. When the taxi slams its brakes, he picks up his dog and runs onto the sidewalk. Because of the fact that the taxi stopped before hitting him, he thinks he has the power to stop time. The taxi driver, a woman named Mickey, points out how stupid that is, but he wants to take a taxi ride over to Penn Station so he can go see the president. We are only now passing the halfway point in this comic, people. He tells her he's from the future, and they first travel to the bank so he can pay the taxi fare, but shock of all shocks, the ATM eats his card because it doesn't recognize the card from 3,000 years in the future. It tells him to go talk to the bank manager, who turns out to be Alan friggin' Greenspan. Again, 2002. Why is the chairman of the Federal Reserve working as a bank manager?
This is weird!
Alan Greenspan explains that the account is valid, but it won't be opened for another 3,000 years. How the hell does he know that? I would just assume that he was some guy trying to use a fake card, not that he's actually from the future and the son of Ted Turner and Jane Fonda 3,000 years from now. And why is nobody questioning how they're still alive in the future? Alan Greenspan then pulls out a literal sack of money with Cal AOL's name on it and says he can't have it for 3,000 years. What the hell is this? Can I talk to the bank president? I don't report to him or anybody else. Somebody hired you, somebody can fire you. My name is Alan Greenspan. I don't work that way.
Alan Greenspan doesn't work that way!
Wow, that's a new one.
As the two walk out, with only a toaster to show for this plot point, a thief suddenly runs in and grabs the bag of money with a zoink sound effect. How the hell did Alan Greenspan not notice the guy running around with a baseball bat? And where the hell is bank security? The guy just runs out, no one's stopping him or anything, and all Mickey does is point out that if Cal AOL actually had the power to stop time, he could have stopped the thief. I also love the vapid expression on Cal's face here. What she said didn't even penetrate his skull. You idiot! Now the bank lost $100 million! Gee, maybe it's a bad idea to keep $100 million in a big sack with a dollar sign on it, as if this was a friggin' Looney Tunes cartoon! They walk out and see a crowd gathered around something. Did the same robber who I didn't stop run out here and kill my lazy, drooly old dog? No, sir. What happened is this alleged perpetrator... Alleged perpetrator? He was running out with the sack of money! Security cameras caught him on tape! Slipped on your dog's drool puddle. That means you get a $100 million reward. Ignoring for a moment how stupidly the plot point of the robber ended, why the hell would he get a reward for something the dog inadvertently did? How ironic is that? How contrived and really lame is more like it. The policeman just hands over the bag of money to him. On whose authority, asshole? That money is the bank's property. And I notice nobody cares about Alan Greenspan's bank and all this. Poor guy was just doing his job. And why does he get a reward anyway? Usually rewards are put out in order to get information that leads to a capture or something like that. Was there a standing warrant for such a hardened criminal as guy who robs a bank by running inside and grabbing it while also holding a baseball bat? Anyway, Cal walks Mickey home. I guess they just forgot about her taxi, and she keeps saying she wants nothing to do with him, but he keeps insisting because he's a moron. Listen, Cal AOL, do you have a nickname? Or-L. Or-L? Look, we get that he was supposed to be a Superman illusion. You don't need to actually point out the full name. Let's go with Al. Just call him Cal. You completely went out of your way to give him that name. Mickey says he can crash there for the evening and then find him a place to stay, despite saying that she disbelieves his story about being a time traveler. She points out that he'll need an ID and the like, but he left it all in the future. However, he does have the AOL disk. It turns out that the disk contains the full amount of online information for the next 3,000 years. How dramatically convenient. It also contains his birth certificate and social security card, which convinces Mickey that he's really from the future.
You must admit this would be impossible to fake.
And now they suddenly decide to go to the theater. Seriously, they just cut from the scene at the computer to them deciding to go to the theater. Because, you know, a taxi driver and the son of Ted Turner and Jane Fonda are clearly going to be the biggest fans of Amadeus or the Pillow Man. They decide to get their tickets from a scalper because... hell if I know. This comic just does whatever it wants. However, it turns out that the scalper is being robbed by the guy who was trying to rob the bank earlier. Bang up jobs the cops did on keeping this guy imprisoned. That was less than a day, and he's already pulling this stuff. Cal AOL, or Al I guess I should call him, steps in to intervene. Al, they're both criminals! Why are you doing this? For truth, justice, and the American way! And he does this while breaking the guy's arm and kicking his ass. Well, time travel may not have given him superpowers, but damn, the guy can fight at least. It will cost you $500 for 2 tickets, and I'm losing money on the deal. $500? What the hell show are they going to see? Given this is Marvel, I'd think it was Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark. But given the humor level of this thing, I think we know what's really playing in that theater.
Hi there, America and friendly nations everywhere. Glad we could get together.
Mickey and Al are upset over the scalper's prices. Then why the hell did you go to a scalper? That's not the truth. I saved your life and you're ripping me off? That's not justice. Let's just call it the American way.
That's not very damn funny.
Inside the theater, an usher tells them to take the dog outside. Wait, why did they even bring the dog with them? Mickey tries to claim it's his seeing eye dog, and her rationale is actually pretty sound. Of course he's blind! Look at how he dressed himself! Point well taken. It wouldn't be easy to look stupider. Hey, finally a character I can root for. This usher. Listen, tool, this not a stupid costume. Oh yeah, great grammar there, kid. The teachers of the year 5000 must be proud. My father gave this to me before he put me in the time machine. That was mildly funny, but only because it was such an absurd thing to say. And my favorite character is gone as he throws them out of the theater. The thief is back again with more injuries. You'd think the poor guy would cut his losses by this point. And he's holding roses now along with a gun. What, was he going to ask Al on a date or something? Why the roses? Wait, he's holding a gun and some roses. Guns and Roses? Is that it? A Guns N' Roses reference? What's the joke? That Guns N' Roses exists? Anyway, when they reveal they have no money, he says he'll take the dog and sell him for medical experiments. I don't think that's how that works, but whatever. The dog makes a run for it, and they go into an alleyway. There's a pow sound as if a gun was fired, and Mickey helps Al up. Oh no, no way! Did the robber kill my dog, who is all I have left of my family and a metaphor for my mother and father? Stop explaining the joke! We get it! Batman reference! Did he leave me with nothing but a burning desire for revenge within my very soul? No, sir. When the alleged perpetrator dove for the leash, he got his head too close to your dog's butt. Rover here blasts out one of his nasty dog farts, and he knocks the perp out cold. Canine flatulence! Clearly there is no higher form of humor. Where did all those people come from? And you get another huge bag of reward money. Where the hell did that bag of money come from? What, was the cop just keeping it in the alleyway for just such an occasion? What is this even a reference to? Does Superman regularly receive bags of money every time he stops Lex Luthor? Did Bill Jamas see that Animaniacs joke?
Here, have a bag of money.
And just assumed it was based on an actual comic? It's like my whole life has been just one long, contrived DC comic book backstory. How does that make you feel? Stupid. No, you were like that before the backstory bit. Oh, when we cut to the year 5002, since apparently Ted Turner miscalculated the asteroid impact, and in fact, they are not doomed. They can't bring Al back, but they can send him stuff. First things first might be to tell him that you're not dead. Back in the present, Al says he still wants to be a superhero, but Mickey points out that he doesn't have superpowers. I could start to do things the Marvel way. You know, have a realistic lifestyle with a job and everything, and then fight crime out of my sense of responsibility. I hate to break it to you, but almost all of Marvel's prominent characters were defined by tragedy in their lives too, and very few of them lack superpowers of some variety. I think DC actually has the market cornered for heroes who fight crime with only their wits and a collection of gadgets. A flash of light appears before them, and Al says that his parents sent him something from the future. Sweet! What is it? A phaser? A transporter? What? Clean underwear!
This isn't funny!
This comic sucks! Now, I know what some of you were thinking. Was this really all that bad? Yes! 1,000 times yes! Immortal Ted Turner is apparently smart enough to invent a time machine out of PlayStation 1 parts, but can't calculate if an asteroid is going to hit Earth. The main character thinks that time travel can give you superpowers. The few jokes that you can actually think of as jokes aren't funny. It wants to be meta and clever, but instead is just obnoxious and insulting to the competition. And Alan Greenspan is a bank manager who can tell the future. And if that's not enough for you, then let me put it this way. I've read the rest of Marville, and in future installments, we have Rush Limbaugh being flatulent, an entire issue written without speech bubbles. No, I don't mean a comic without dialogue, I mean there are no speech bubbles. A humor comic suddenly takes a right turn into a discussion about evolution versus intelligent design. The first human being is revealed to be, in fact, Wolverine. Also, Al and Mickey meet God. But we're not doing that next week because I can't review any more issues of Marville without a lot more alcohol. I just noticed there's a meteor heading for the scalper's head. Okay, why? Ugh.